our last sessions. Rita, we see you as well. Welcome. Okay, we'll slowly start so that we have also enough sufficient time for questions later on. Thanks everyone for joining today. We are glad to have the team from different parts of the world joining, myself in Singapore, Giti in Switzerland, Priyanka in India, and also Britta in Germany, as well as the rest of the group here, I think also from Europe and Asia. We have much more people joining along the way. And the idea for today is to use, the community strengths that we have to understand how do we support each other to activate or connect or reactivate our networks. We also have a wonderful facilitator slash guest speaker here today. I will let her introduce herself a bit more, but Margit is on a call and she has extremely diverse experience working with various organizations in looking into training, change management. She has moved from a career of one that is from the corporate world of 2 decades, right, Giti? Approximately, and then moving on to work on her passion projects, and now freelancer and as well as entrepreneur, as well as launching also her own book, Change Matters as well. And there is a lot that we can learn. Myself, I'm the co-founder of Angelou. As many of you know, we are the network that supports career transition, regardless of the life stage. We hope to support people in also continuing their professional career journeys. And this topic is extremely important because it's often the way into a new sector, it's a way into a new country, it's a way new into a job opportunity, it's a way new into a new experience if you're looking relaunch post a career break. And why we decided to come in here and share, and feel free to ask questions along the way. The agenda for today is now we have a few minutes for intro, a recap, and there will be a discussion led by Margit here, sharing also her own personal journey, and feel free to also ask questions along the way for her, because she has definitely very smartly and very wisely leveraged and also worked with her network closely to engage and be involved, myself included, in the projects that she is working on continuously throughout the years. There will be a Q&A, and there will be obviously takeaways and wrap up. But to start with, and welcome also to those who are continuously joining, I thought it's also important to give an overview of how that journey from a career transition looks like for many of the members that join us. So Angelou has worked with various companies, a lot in the tech sector, finance sector, and individuals going into the sectors as well. Also for healthcare and consumer goods, we work with 2,000 individuals throughout the years, and the journeys are often similar with more or less emphasis in the different areas. So starting with career clarity, what do you want out of the next step? It doesn't need to be, A to Z. It can be the next best steps for you in terms of a career journey. How do you then create a goal to make that a reality? Whether is it returning to work after a break? Whether do you want to change sector? Do you want to take on the next leadership responsibility as well? Then how do you then, which is the focus for today, how do you connect to a network that supports, as we often call it, our own personal board of directors, into an area perhaps sometimes that we don't have a lot of experience in, or a country that we don't know the culture for. And then the next part is, how do we prepare ourselves for the fast changing world of digitization, technology? And so that's important that the upskilling process and the future work processes understand as well. So we as part of the team work together closely with our members, trying to provide resources across the we call the 3 C's, and also the F, the future of work and digitization. The next part is, if some of you are interested, we also have the guide that we provide to go into each area a bit more in depth. And today we look at step number 7, So going through the journey, what are some of the process that we can support with is something that we are evolving and learning also from the people that we work with. So feel free to also give us feedback and ideas, etc. But I would like to leave the most part of the time today to Giti, or Margit, sorry, that's the name that we call each other as friends. And then feel free to take the best or most out of this discussion so that we can continue supporting you through this session and beyond.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me along. And just a little heads up, today I'm not going to train you. I'm not going to run a workshop. I almost expect a nice virtual cup of tea, water, coffee, whatever you have at your hand to talk. I'd like to tell a little bit about my story of moving from the corporate career to being my own boss, being a business owner. And I would like you to feel free to really ask questions about what would intrigue you the most about activating and deactivating your network, how it can help you. I hope my story will show you that it is possible. So if you have a new idea, if you want to work in a different manner, it is possible, and the networks can help. So a little bit of an introduction about myself. Once we talk about the three key takeaways, we want to make sure that you craft your networking strategy and build meaningful connections. Now, either at home or in the professional arena, we already have connections. The question is whether we can make them meaningful, whether we can make them valuable from both ends. Then hope that through this little sharing, you will see how you can strengthen the communication that you already have with people and how you can stay in touch and also position yourself as an expert. I'm not saying I figured it out all, but I've got a couple of practices that have worked, and they are simple, and I hope you can copy with pride from me. And last but not least, I'd like to share with you how I decided to write a book and reach a lot more people through that. Today in this call, I'm happy to see Dali Declaire, who was one of my partners in crime in this journey as my proofreader and buddy in the author's circle. So if you have questions, he's also your man to reach out to. But let's see. One thing that we find really important is to find out what is the one question you would like to get answered. So using the QR code or the link that I asked Pino or Carolina to put in right away, we just put in a little question, a Slido. You can use either the link in the chat on Zoom or with your phone. You can just go through the QR code into these. I would love to ask you, what is it that you would like to get answered today? What I would like to make sure is that as I share my story and some of my insights, comments, recommendations, with the help of Carol and Pino, we can actually pause and answer as many questions as possible. So you give me the vote of confidence by joining today for this call. Let me give you the confidence back and really respond to as many questions as possible. I'm going to wait for a couple, and then I'm going to reveal the first questions coming up so that they don't influence you, but also we can see what kind of comments are coming up. So again, at any time during this session, you can put questions in because Carol has access to them. So when I'm posing, she will be able to ask them, group them, and make sure that this session is relevant and practical enough for you. So a couple of questions that are coming up already is how much of networking are global rules and what aspects differ depending on your location, how to pinpoint my expertise, how to go towards entrepreneurship. I'm going to share that with you, and how to reconnect with local communities. I'm going to let Carol to spin in the questions when we get to that. But for now, I'd love to just leave you to it. So if in a couple of minutes, if in 15 minutes you have questions, please do write them here. We will have access to them. Now with that, I'd love to just do a little introduction. So some of you might have seen on LinkedIn a little bit about my profile, but if I was to show you my background in one page, this would be it. My background is mostly in change management. My my core focus is consulting, training, and coaching on the human side of how to get people to accept changes at the workplace. I'm happy to say since last month, I'm also a published author, and Carol referred to the book that we talked about already, Change Matters. I'm 43 years old, over 20 years of experience in the corporate and not-for-profit sector. As it was already mentioned, I actually spent the first 15 years in the corporate world. I loved it, but life comes in the way, and I will show you how. And I decided to embark on an entrepreneurship journey together with Carol and some like-minded parents through the My Career and Child initiative that grew out to be End Ahead, that was looking ahead on how we can redesign our careers. I have consulted and worked on many, many transformational initiatives. I have lived and worked from countries, my original country is Hungarian. I lived in New Zealand, Singapore, in Belgium, in Costa Rica, Germany, Switzerland, and I hope I'm not missing more. But I have lived and worked in these countries over the last 20 years, and I bring in some insights on what it means to really tackle this challenge of being accepted as a known person in my field. Reinventing myself. This is the focus of today in light of what we talk about in terms of reactivating our network. There is a lot of re, and I love this picture because it's highlighted in red. Reinvent myself. We always reinvent ourselves because as we have an evolution in life, we have big epiphanies and new moments and new priorities and new things that really matter to us. And in all fairness, we change the way we are, the way we operate, the way we live. And that's exactly that I believe most of you will be able to relate to, because when things around us constantly are changing, sometimes we have to adapt, or simply we want to adapt. We want to have a different way of life. Now, when it comes to my little journey, it's a little bit hard to put them in just one slide, but I intended it. It's a bit like a roadmap, my journey. We all are born at a certain point in time, and then we grow up as in our families. Hopefully a happy childhood that was filled with love and learning. But once we reach 18, for some people it's a little bit more, we are ready to graduate from the world of the home and explore the world, either literally or just the world around us in a city, in a country, or in the globe. And we start venturing out of our comfort zone, of this beautiful comfort zone that our families have created to us. And we might get our first job. And then we get another job and another one with all its beauties, its uplifting moments and challenges. And each and every time we actually are reinventing ourselves. Here we might have been the daughter, the son, the friend to our classmates. That was our primary personality, identity. Here we start becoming the professional. We want to be seen and really evolve in the world. And then sooner or later, I believe love makes its way. We learn and we fall in love. And then other priorities come up, such as eventually most of us choose to become parents. And that's another milestone and epiphany moment where we realize things we liked before, that worked before, no longer work. And there are lots of questions along the way. I'm myself 43 years old, so I could put a little number around this. I've had a couple of big milestones, and I would say out of all of these, the three that I would highlight is when I graduated from school, when I left my country after getting the qualifications that I felt were sufficient to go ahead and explore a little bit of the world, and joined an international organization called ISEC that just opened my horizon to the different cultures and different countries and opportunities around. Then almost 10 years later, a big milestone of the jet setter Margit, that you would have known me as at the time, was finding my partner. And suddenly not thinking for just myself, but for him as well. And the third one is definitely when I got my first child, and then the second one. Now, in this journey, I was lucky enough that after graduating and having a little bit of a traveling around, I joined an organization some of you might be familiar with, DHL, back in Singapore, where I had my first job. Loved it, loved the country, the region, the job, my boss, my bosses eventually, because I stayed there for 5 years. And it was one of those opportunities where I had the chance to actually explore different parts of the real professional life. And I remember it was in 2007 in Thailand when I joined a change management training ran by a very knowledgeable Canadian master consultant of the topic called Bev. And when I saw her in action, I felt like this is exactly what I want to do one day. I loved that she had a theory, a methodology. She was teaching us how to manage the human side of change, but also talked about a lot of really interesting real life projects. So the theory was also brought to life, which was really important for my pragmatic self. I ended up getting the opportunity to join the change management team of DHL globally, where I spent a significant part of my career and do a little bit what that lady in Thailand was doing at the time and loved it. But then, as you can see on this picture, the blessing came along the way. And also my husband got a job in a different country in Switzerland, and we chose to relocate. Now, something that really worked for me was that I allowed myself to already practice my wings whilst I was working in a corporate sector. And that's something I'd love to give to you. Not every country has the same setup. At the time I was working in Germany, and fortunately in Germany, you've got quite a few holidays in a year. I didn't need all of them, in all fairness. So I had an appendix edit to my addendum, sorry, not appendix, an addendum edit to my contract that allowed me to work with other clients. Now, this was 1 or 2 days a year at first, but that was okay because I could practice my wing and see how amazing it is when you are paid for something you love and you are good at. But I wanted the safety of my work as it was, and I really enjoyed working for that organization. Now, when I was blessed with a child and we moved countries, and I know many people in the And Ahead community are changing countries, sometimes the corporations don't give us the chance to continue with them in the new geographical place, and we have to reinvent ourselves again. You have the option of leveraging on, for example, on the And Ahead community, the platform to find jobs in the new country you are, or you have the other option of seeing how you can set up your own business. I decided to continue on the freelancing bit, practicing my wings way beyond 1 or 2 days, but still at my ease, because I wanted to also be present for my child and then later children and not work full time. Now, building up your own business is really scary, if you ask me. I loved the comfortable life in a corporation where you have a branding team, you have a finance team, you have operational experts, you have sales experts, and you can be just in your own cocoon, really thrill in that capacity, but you know how to reach out to them. When you run your own business, it can feel a little bit lonely after a very social corporate career, but it was something that was worth exploring. Now, what I would love to share with you is what it has been like for me to embark on my freelance journey. Some of you might have heard of James Redmore, and website is right below. When I started out, he was doing a couple of free training sessions and an assessment, and you had to respond to this assessment. After 15 years of working in the corporate career, I have to say I pretty much said I was doing every single activity he was mentioning. And the self-assessment finished with this drawing, and I was, could I say, diagnosed as an unpaid intern. I'm going to take a moment here because I found it hilarious, but also very eye-opening. Now, when you run your own freelance business, and hope some of you will choose to do that, we all go through an evolution as well. An unpaid intern is basically a business owner who does everything from the admin, juggles everything, as you can see in the picture, from the admin to finance to sales, business marketing, content development, relationship management, customer service. Basically, we do everything because we don't necessarily have the courage to outsource, to give things away. Now, once you get over this, the second stage he talks about, which can really resonate with me, is the overworked, underpaid employee. You are your own boss, but you work way too much and you don't get necessarily the salary, the benefits as you want. Now, some people take a day or two to get through this, but some of us need a little bit longer. And I think it just validates that sometimes it doesn't go right away so quickly. Then you have the modern day marketer who tries to do everything, really uphill, drive all the marketing activities. We are already known in the world of our topic, and we kind of carry with ourselves people who might be working with us already. And the digital CEO is the person who receives a lot of money. Of course, this is the to-be transformation James Wedmore is selling, but the person already has a team and things are smoothly are going ahead. To me, this little picture from the self-assessment he offered was really eye-opening, because I realized I was rather here in level 1 and level 2. I think today, in all fairness, I'm probably at level 2, 3. So I'm not yet, I haven't figured out everything. But I believe by leveraging on my network, I've been able to make more leaps. And I hope you see that. Even if within your corporate environment, you want to keep growing, the similar way, you hopefully are not just being the unpaid intern, but you are able to leverage on your network to perform at your best. Now, the world is my playground. I do like thinking of it that way. A couple of really important things that are really essential to put forward. The first one is that we need to work in our zone of genius. And that's a bit like a niche. Now, I don't have the lexical definition of zone of genius, but the zone of genius is where you are really at your element. You do what you are good at, what you love, a little bit like as Anne talks about the ikigai. And I let you look it up, and the Hat has plenty of resources on the ikigai itself, this Japanese terminology that helps you find your zone of genius. But basically, where do you use most of your time, where you really feel high performing, motivated, energetic? And that's my zone of genius. Now, for me, my energizing talent is really, I love developing others. I do like developing concepts, and I'm super hands-on. So I don't like therapy and strategies only. I need a variety where I'm allowed to get things done as well. Now, I would like to work with clients who uplift me and I uplift them, and I need to scope them that way. Again, when you are in an unpaid intern mindset, I have to admit to you, I was accepting any clients as long as they paid. Yeah, sure, I will figure it out. But some of them I was suffering through. And at first, I believe not many people have the luxury of being able to choose amongst clients. But as we grow as business owners, we can and we should, because sometimes you can still help them by simply directing them to a better fitting clientele. Now, the world is my playground, but is it really? Now, I'd love to spend a little moment on the imposter syndrome. Don't know if you have heard of this syndrome before, but basically it's really about, do I have the knowledge to do that? I mean, I know so many people in my field who know it so much better than I do. And either you are a freelancer, a business owner, or an employee in an organization, you might feel that. There are so many people, look, he's got better qualifications and 5-10 years more experience, or has shown this so much better. Now, one thing that helped me is actually a book that I read called Chill and Prosper from Dennis Duffel Thomas. And she said, imposter syndrome, even with millionaires, with CEOs, is real. And what little clue she gave me that I just love, she said, we don't have to solve people's problem within our organization or for our clients. It's enough if we contribute to their success. If, for example, on a scale of 0 to 10, they are at 3, if we help them get to 4, it's already a contribution that's worth the time. It is not our role either, it's for colleagues or clients to get them from 3 to 10 ourselves, because then the knowledge is not there. We need to guide them to get there. And that word contribute, whenever I get freaked out, till today with some of my projects, I just remember, I will contribute with what I know, and I'm committed to get them to one level higher. Now, for the next one is when clients uplift or I uplift them, money isn't flowing in. Sometimes it isn't. And then we tend to accept clients that are not so lucrative, so to speak, and we are not feeling in our zone of genius and really at our element. And asking ourselves, is there a demand for this change stuff I'm doing? And again, the same author I was just talking to you about, she says, there are people out there who need your advice, who need your insights. Now I'm going to stop here, and I ask Carol in a moment to ask me questions from the audience. If any of you have already a question that you would like to unmute yourself, I'd love to pause here before I continue with the presentation. So Carol, any questions you would like to raise?
Yeah, no, I think your questions are really your what you've shared of your personal journey, and thanks for sharing that of, you know, your corporate career and how you've stepped and prepare your wings, as you mentioned. I think it's a great way for us to also learn how we could establish what is our zone of genius. One of the questions I see here is, for example, someone asked, how do I pinpoint my expertise? You know, so it is, how do you identify that? We can call it ikigai, we can call it, you know, what makes us the 1% out of the 100% in top in the world for that expertise. Or, as you rightfully say, how do we move someone from 0 to 1, 0 to 4? Because it needs to be an authentic exchange that you provide meaning. Because the other question that that we have from the audience, which is linked to the first one, is how do I know that re-engagement with my network is meaningful? And putting it here as well, that this is, you know, similar, whether is it for starting out as a freelancer or going into building a network for a job, because all networking discussions are discussions, and there are opportunities to provide meaning to a potential employee, employer, advisor, headhunter, potential client. The scope is similar. What can we offer as services, as value add, as, you know, an idea advice to another person? And that makes it easier. So to add on to that, for anyone who wants to unmute, as Margaret suggests, feel free to as well. If not, what are your thoughts for the question, Margaret?
Well, there's a valuable resource that actually the Ande community has around this. I mean, finding your expertise in the 3-step model that Ande is advocating, there are a couple of guiding questions that I would recommend you. Maybe it's going back to Ikigai, but you can use any others. I would just warn against expertise being something that you've done for a really long time, because you might be brilliant, let's say, at finance, and it might come easy to you, but actually you are an artist who likes painting. So I would be careful with just going with years of experience. Go with where you actually feel a lot of passion and interest and want to grow and want to really bring joy and growth to the world. You can still build on the financial expertise that you've built, just to pick that example. And then see how you can make it valuable to the world, so you get paid for it as well. Now, another thing I feel I've been personally challenged with is, I know we have men and gentlemen and women as well here today, but sometimes there is this unspoken expectation of moms and women to do things for free, or simply we don't have the courage to charge our people, our clients or colleagues. And colleagues is, of course, it's not the financial charging. But I think what it takes is the mindset work to dare to embark on it. I'm quite a safety seeker, so I wouldn't say that I was readily planning my next step to be a business owner. I was actually scared of it. I like the safety of being employed, I admit to you. And circumstances of changing countries and being blessed with a child were all triggers that in that milestone chart I showed you that actually invited me to consider this path. For me, again, I'm going to start talking a lot more about networking. Finding the supporting network was super important. I'm blessed enough to have a partner in life, my husband, who said, it's your time to test it. And it has taken a while. I'm not saying it was immediately there. But in terms of success, one of the success measures I say is that I'm almost earning as much as my full-time employment was a couple of years ago, and I don't work full-time. I actually spend a lot of time with my kids as well. It takes a while, but it's possible. And really, if I can do it, you guys can do it too. One path that, if there are no questions, I can't see you. Carol, are there any questions you would like to ask?
There are quite a few more.
Okay, I'll let you read them up so I don't get distracted for the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, so the questions that are considered, I think it's an interesting one, because you have also traveled around the world. You know, how much of networking are global rules, and what aspects differ depending on your location. So the global versus local networking practices, and how do you make it engaging. And then we had an example of someone who just moved also from India to Germany. People, if you like to, because you've also identified yourself, if you like to also unmute, feel free to also do that as well. And it's been really tricky to manage or understand, I think, the local culture. People, feel free to say a few words.
Certainly. Hello, hi. I think I had attended the previous webinar as well, and I think I'm already in touch with your organization and the head. And I think I had a discussion that I've been going for a vacation today. I'm going to my home country for a month's time, and then probably I'll come back to you guys and take some subscription to take this ahead. So, and I'm excited for that as well. Russ, I come from India and I come from logistics background, and I was so happy to know that the today's speaker has worked for DHL and I have worked for FedEx. So yeah, it's gonna be a big network for us. I've spent almost 12 years of my life in FedEx, so I'm sure I'm gonna have a good time and with Margaret to discuss about how things went for her and how things are gonna go for me, because it's been a year. I moved to Germany, and yeah, ich lerne Deutsch. I think just because just because of the language thing, I've been pulled back. But yeah, it's I'm gaining confidence now, learning language, talking to people, understanding the culture. So yeah, it's a great journey, and I would proudly say that I came on a dependent visa with my wife. So my wife is supporting me here. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster ride, but yeah, I'm enjoying it.
And I think all of us internationally based people go through the honeymoon phase for the first couple of months, and then reality hits and it's our time to explore that. Now, I heard kind of three topics here. So Vipul, you talked a little bit about language. Making an effort to learn the local language is key. Even if you don't master it and you're not blessed with linguistic skills, just make the effort. Culturally, another point I picked out from Carolina's question, culturally, I do believe we can make efforts such as getting on the country's Chamber of Commerce website, where they talk a lot about business ethics. One of the favorite books I have is Erin Meyer's Culture Map, that is really pragmatically talking about cultural differences. So you can compare, let's say, India to Germany, and where communication leadership is expected to be really different. Now, there was another question, the first question you asked me, Carol, which was around global and local networking. And I think I'm still figuring out how to manage both. But wherever I have had the chance to live and work, I have built a group of friends, a group of good colleagues to stay in touch. And I think one of the things is to somehow stay in touch, not necessarily with everyone, but those where you really have the chemistry, and nurture it. We're going to talk about that nurturing a lot, because it's not about just asking for jobs. That's just one of the really switch off activities we could do, but actually nurture and give value, because then those opportunities will arise. Now, I mentioned to you that, I hope that answered more or less the question. I mentioned to you that I wrote a book, and I've had the chance to write a couple of articles and do a couple of podcasts on this, but I took it from a different angle for today. So for some of you, especially if you want to be a freelancer, you might get that advice. Why don't you write a book? It will give you great credibility. Now, writing a book sounds really cool. In 2010, when I was doing an expedition in Latin America, I wrote a book about 100-something pages in the bush, but underneath the mosquito net. But exactly, my friend and buddy Dali, who is a proofreader, told me, okay, there are certain styles that I recognize here. It's not necessarily ready for publishing. And I was like, I read it so many times already. How do I do that? That's why when I decided to run my own business, and I decided I'm going to give it a try to write down in a book some of my beliefs, learning suggestions, practical approaches to challenges that I have faced, that I will rally up a team. So writing the book to me was the first step. I started writing it, but I also got people like Dali to help me with the language, with the style. I got an author coach to help me guide in this process, because it's not just a matter of sitting down every day in front of the computer. There is a lot more thinking behind that I did not know much about. Now, once the book was more or less ready, that's when I got the recommendation, why don't you build and engage your audience? And I was like, I got questions like, how many people are on your distribution list? And I was like, 0. I don't have a distribution list. Okay, how many people have attended your workshops and colleagues that you are in touch with? I was like, in LinkedIn, I have a good bunch of people and I stay in contact, but it's not so active. And I post maybe once a day on LinkedIn. It's like, okay, that's not visibility. So if you want to create excitement around your book, you have to do a little bit more than that. And through a program that I did with a crowdfunding for authors course, the consultant recommended me to come up with lead magnets. Again, I admit to you, it's not a terminology I used before, I knew, but basically when you are in the freelance world, you need to give out certain valuable things so that people can access it, get a taste of how you think, feel. This can be a document, this can be a webinar, a virtual session, it can be an ebook, it can be almost anything, but people get an idea, that's how market is working. And that's when I decided back in November to put up on LinkedIn a note, guys, I'm a first-time proper author, and I'm looking for feedback for a sample chapter. And being able to build my audience and build up a distribution list was super important, because most people, and that comes where I'm going to talk about networking, most people like communicating a little bit more personal than just social media updates. Then I started crowdfunding book, and then have been looking at reach and impact. For each of these steps, I created just one slide with a couple of bullet points. So the writing the book is about ideating. Think about your zone of genius, as we talked about before, your expertise and your passion, and think about what content you would like to share with the world. Do research and find courses about publications. If you're like me, you probably have never published a book. And that's why I reached out to experts and I started talking with them, exploring what it takes, what are the milestones, how it works. And I also attended, some of you might be familiar with Hay House Publishing. I attended a free writers challenge that they regularly arrange. And it was so eye-opening because they just demystified what's the difference between publishing, self-publishing, what it means if we don't have the writing talent as opposed to having a collaborative writer, a ghost writer. And suddenly it became more and more reachable just by informing myself. If you play with the thought, even just doing this, looking up Hay House or any other free courses, it's worth an hour of your time. Now, find and network with experts to collaborate was super important. So I mentioned Dali on the call. I also had my author coach, Andy Mark, and we started working together. Now, it was a lot of writing, rewriting, writing, rewriting, writing, rewriting. If you're a less restless person like myself, you probably would have found it quite a challenge to get into it as well. But I knew this can't be done just quickly as I usually like it. It needs to be done properly. And this rewriting, writing takes time, but you don't have to finish a full book before you start engaging people. And that's where I involved, amongst others, Carol as well. When I started to ask people, and I mentioned to you that lead magnet, I give out one chapter of my book and I asked for feedback on a Google form. I admit to you, this was one of my key milestones in mindset, because when you put out there that I'm writing a book, you suddenly become vulnerable. And I've got about 400 odd downloads of my free chapter, and 148 people gave me detailed feedback. Now, when I got the first pieces of feedback, it was sometimes really hard because not all of them are positive. Most of them are constructive, though. It felt a little bit like, oh, someone is calling my baby ugly. Like, it's my first chapter. It's so beautiful, and it just doesn't click. And I had to work on my mindset that my book won't be loved with everyone. And it's the same with my work as a freelancer. So in my network, I need to find the people who like the idea, and even if it's with imperfections, would be partnering with me. I also found someone, an expert in crowdfunding, that I did not know much about, to help me finance it. Because when you write a book and you start rallying people up, that's not for free. You actually spend a significant amount of money. But if you do a crowdfunding, you can actually get others to pledge your project and make it possible. I've learned a lot about marketing practically. back a long time ago, I had a degree in marketing, 20 something years ago, but I didn't really know what it's like today. And I started learning about what it means to write daily LinkedIn post, what it takes to write newsletters to those people who are now on my distribution list. And very importantly, when we talk about meaningful networking, the first thing is giving valuable insights to people. So in my newsletter every week, I wasn't just saying, I'm writing a book, come and pledge me in March. And that was already in November, December. No, I was trying to look for interviewing senior leaders, writing articles, giving out resources, inviting them to virtual workshops. So I also help them move forward and I keep them warm. That was the time when, amongst others, Carol also joined my VIP lounge team, and I saw here also Marima. Quite a few people joined, a couple of dozens of people joined my VIP lounge team. These were the very important people who said, Margit, Gitti, we will support you, not just financially, but we will spread the word in our networks for it. Now I have, I don't know, maybe 2,500 people on LinkedIn. I don't need exactly remember, but I needed people who also dare to share, hey, here is a book coming up, come and join the campaign, come and become the part of it. And very importantly, I had to learn new platforms, new technological platforms to be able to process everything that it took. It was a huge learning process. It still is, but it is possible and available. So that's something I would say. I'm just a little insight to the video.
Endless meetings, PowerPoint slides, numbers, facts, and demotivated people who could not care less. Are you tired of working hard, yet others not embracing the change you want in your workplace? Leaders facing organizational change are often so buried in the process of change that they lose sight of the result. To build a better, stronger company with engaged employees that thrive. 70% of projects fail to achieve their objectives due to disengaged and demotivated employees, but it doesn't have to be this way. That's why I'm excited to announce my new book, Change Matters.
Now, this is a 1-minute segment of a 3-minute video. I don't know if you've come up with elevator pitches before. It took me 18 iterations to come up with the text of this short video. This is just 1 minute of the 3 minutes, but I needed to put out there in social media, in my network, what I'm up to and why. So this is just the beginning of it. Now, between us, it's a quite cozy little environment. It was fun to go over from Switzerland to Spain, which was much cheaper to do a video. I felt like a goddess being videoed and proved by experts, but also it took me a lot of mindset work to show, okay, I don't know, am I the strongest in my field? Not necessarily, but I want to put out there what I believe in and what I would like to contribute to. So this is another one where I challenged my status quo and I started reinventing myself, just going back to one of the previous slides. Going back to step 3, crowdfunding. Campaign, video, call to actions. There was a lot of excitement in the process of putting out there, guys, I have 30 days to get the funds to be able to pay all the experts that I've been working with, but there were lots of doubts as well. And when we run our own business, when we network, there will be both sides, excitement and doubt as well. And that's why strong partners, clients and collaborators in my network were super important. I again highlighted the word network here because without my network, it would not have been possible. And again, I'm not just talking about getting the funds, but also mutual benefits. So as I was putting together my crowdfunding site, I said, guys, you can pledge at different levels. I will give you the book. I will give you the ebook. I will prepare workbooks. I will run workshops. I will even design an online course that you will be able to join in the autumn. I will be running 1 hour, 4 hours and 1 day long workshops if you support the initiative. So I wanted to show them, I'm not looking for your money, only your money. Be part of the journey. I want to make sure that there are mutual benefits here. And with the pledges, we made it happen. Now you could ask, okay, that sounds all good, but how is it working now? I keep networking. I keep up those communication pieces that I mentioned to you, the daily LinkedIn post. And believe me, I haven't figured out what's the highest ratings, highest views, most impactful post, but at least on LinkedIn, I'm present. I write weekly newsletters. Now, if you are employed today and you would like to grow and use your network, that's how you would like to build on the And Ahead community, I would still propose to you to use your internal or external networking platforms. Some of the companies use Yammer, for example. Can you be more active on Yammer so people see you? Some of you in your companies, you use LinkedIn or other platforms a lot. Use that and be present there. It's not just about posting, it's about interacting with people to help them, to give them value. And right now in the exciting phase of just enjoying the little bubbles of new ideas that come up on how I can further build on my book. Just stay tuned. I have way too many, but I'm going to explore that. That's one of the beauties of building your own business when you choose to do that. So you don't all have to do it, is to play with these new ideas. If you are within an organization, keep bubbling with these light bulbs. Choose one or two, propose it, don't give up. Just by networking with your colleagues, you can also influence your leaders to support you and make them happen. With that, I'd like to just recap some of the key points that I was hoping to share with you around reactivating your network. The first one that we talked about is recognizing our triggers and milestones in life. Remember that life journey? We all have different big phases in our lives. And there are triggers where we are invited to reinvent ourselves, and we can reinvent ourselves. Finding our ikigai, again, I'm not including that into this session, but I invite you to check out the And Ahead resources. It's helping you to find out when you are in your zone of genius and find things that are valuable to your community. Building supportive connections already at ideation. It's important for me, this at ideation. If you've got an idea, find out in your personal and professional network who are the people who would be your sparring partners, your partners in crime, and then expand on your meaning network. I don't know what our meaningful network, and remain in touch with your network by giving them value. So these were the 4 points I wanted to ask. And whilst I'm waiting for questions and answers, I would like to also ask you to come to And Ahead on the same graph that we had just a moment ago. And you can write your biggest takeaways. And I would like to ask Carol to ask a few more questions.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, Margaret. I think the journey that you have from first writing the book or ideation about writing the book, following on as a way to share to the world or shout out to the world, this is the single most topic that you really want to put, your brand on and also to create an impact on. Is such an interesting journey, and I think that would be replicable also for a corporate career, as well as a freelance career, entrepreneurship journey as well. One of the questions is, how do you leverage it to find a job? So maybe I could tweak the question a bit. If you were looking for a job, I don't think you are at this point because you've gone so far in your entrepreneurship journey. But if you're looking to find a job, would you also write a book, or how would you use that process in your learning journey so far? Because it creates conversations, and one of the hardest part for someone looking for a job, to make that first ask, it's always, I can't ask someone for a job. It's the common reactions we have. Someone has also said, how do you open up that discussion? So what would you do in that case, and maybe is there a way to link it to writing a book as part of the process?
I think it's a fair question. So writing a book was specifically an example that we talked about to bring it really, this topic of reactivating your network, something very practical. It's not something that I would suggest to everyone. I think if you are a natural writer, you reflect and you write and people give you feedback that is going on really well, pursue that path. Either you are employed or looking for a new job, or you're doing your own business. I think what matters is if you're looking for a new job, how can you bring up that topic? This was the second part that, Carol, you mentioned. I would say don't ask for jobs right away. Ask for advice. I would look out in my network to people with good connections and who have a good understanding of me. And I would ask for a 15-minute call. I would say that the article that Enda had and you posted about weak connections helping you get the best jobs is a very smart advice. Not your closest allies, our friends, are often the ones who are going to open up a door to a job opportunity. It's sometimes the weak connections. So people that you are in touch with, you can ask them for a 15-minute call. Again, I would not make it about me finding a job, but I'm exploring opportunities, and I would love to just take 10-15 minutes of your time and ask you these two questions. People like giving advice, and I believe that if they have left with a positive impression of you, if you've got a good positive chemistry with them, they will dedicate 10-15 minutes of their time. It feels good. Goodwill feels good. And for most people, I believe the answer would be, yeah, sure, we can. And openly you can say, okay, I'm just looking at people. If you want to go ahead in the logistics sector, I'm looking at exploring opportunities in logistics. And what I'm most interested in is what are the most important things in Germany over the last 1 year, and where do you think are the most sought after skills in the industry? Now, this is something that people might just respond to via email or just say, let's have a 10-minute call and I will share with you. And with that, we as job seekers, we can get insights to what's relevant. And at the end, depending on how the chemistry is going, we could ask for permission to ask if they could recommend us other people to reach out to find out the opportunities. So that would be probably my advice, to ask for short calls or very brief advice, but don't take much time of theirs because they will likely say no if you ask for more.
Thanks for sharing. I think, go ahead, Vipul.
Yeah, I think that gives a great insight, and really appreciate Margaret.
Yeah, I think one perhaps point that sometimes is frustrating for someone to receive a cold message if it's a warm contact, but someone you don't know really well, is when someone asks for a coffee appointment without stating the goal. So that's a bit tricky, I think, for someone, receiving a lot of messages, hiring managers, for example, recruiters, headhunters, or even those that you want to come into with business connections. And I think one of the questions that I personally really love, I don't know, what do you feel? And Marima, you could also say something, or the rest of the team here, is that, when someone asks a question of how would you advise on what are the one or two things that could help me be successful in either entering a sector or in the sector? Because that also gives a bit of understanding that, hey, this is your point of success, or the question or curiosity in terms of succeeding. Then you are also portrayed as, oh, this person sees me as successful, to give a bit of encouragement on the other party, and then give a bit of summary. If the person is free, they could, have a coffee, or if not, they could answer you and have that conversation as well, digitally. So I think that will be an interesting one. Yeah. Other questions, or do
I would ask what's value for the other person. So, for example, if I want to get an advice, I could say I'm writing a LinkedIn article where I'm interviewing a couple of people in the industry anonymously, or your name being mentioned. I would love to tap on your knowledge. So we actually give value to the other person because we give them more visibility if they wish to tap on that. And also through that, we help others in similar situations. Another recommendation, I think it was you, Marima, back in time, who you shared. It's one thing to put out updates, but also to engage with people we want to stay in touch with. So some people use Facebook. I'm more into LinkedIn when it comes to the professional world, but I actually check what people put out there, what questions, what doubts, what successes, and try to comment on them, because that's the two-way dialogue where we actually see, oh, they have a challenge, or they are working on this initiative. I have an article in mind that would be valuable to them. Comment on their post and give value through that, I think.
Yeah. And I think for some, the thought about writing a book may seem like a huge task if we're at the beginning of the journey. writing an article to start with, or putting a question out is a good way to start. When you started your journey, Margaret, did you do a lot of those before, you built out the content for your book throughout the years? If you could share also with the group here.
I had this random idea by the age of 40, I want to be a published author. And then suddenly I was blessed with my second child and COVID kicked in. So that took 3 more years. I think it was one of those, is like, why not try? What's the worst thing that can happen? And I'm still with that. Sometimes I go too quick and dirty with some of the things, but I want to see out whether it's worth exploring it further. And with the book, I think what has helped, I did not know how much work it is. It is a big work, even if you're a talented writer, I believe. But if you rally up the right experts and you mobilize your network, it is possible. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Any other further questions otherwise? Or else should we move into the biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I see only 2 people responded, so I'm just going to wait for that. So on the screen, you can still see the QR code. Let's see who else wants to add what they took away. If questions are coming up, feel free to add. I will see if I have 5, I will undisclose the first answers. Let's see.
That makes sense. And also thanks to everyone for joining. I'm also looking through all the questions. There was a
Carol
question.
and I were hoping to put out a not so common networking session. So we were not talking about the theories of networking, but some practical experiences. And we hope that it was valuable for you to get a little bit more insight on what people can see just from social media and short chats.
Absolutely. There are some questions you really touch on. Feel free to also jump in to give a bit more in-depth based on the time that we have. So what are some ways to optimize my network connections? I think was one question that you've touched on. And someone mentioned that they would love to hear more about your entrepreneurship journey that you've shared along the way. So anything else to add there?
I think we will have to have separate discussions on that, but for the sake of the whole participation, let's agree on that. I'm glad to see the crowdfunding thing and the whole crowdfunding. When I got into it, I have to say I did not really know. Things cost, and when you are employed, kind of you get the budget from the bosses. When you are your own boss, you need to get the budget, and it can be scary. But if you explore what crowdfunding is, I use the website Kickstarter. You actually can find people who pledge and help you make those things happen. So I definitely would say, if money is a concern for you to explore a new project that you would like to put in place, then feel free to explore similar websites and how it can work. Now, I'd like to, as we are finishing slowly, I'd like to just finish with one quote that I personally really love, which is from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I think this is just, again, such a fitting quote. I use that usually for my change management workshops, because stakeholder management is really about how we make people feel. But I believe networking as well. It doesn't really matter what you say or do, but how do people feel will influence whether you can count on them for the next endeavors you would like to have. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And Carol, I pass the word back to you.
No, thank you so much for sharing also so openly your whole process and how we link it to networking. I mean, we could go on for ages, but feel free to write to us if you feel you need some support. We're happy to also continue sharing through the monthly sessions that Anna Head runs. The next one will be understanding how do you apply also to employers that values your time, your worth, and to the right one that matches your career goals as well. Thank you for also all the questions that we have today. We will be sharing the link so that you can relook at this session as well, and also some couple of tools through the resources that we have built along the way. Margaret, thank you so much for being here and speaking so openly and also answering the questions. Yeah, we'd love to have you back again at another time. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think there are a few people, and Dali, thanks for being here as well. Great to see you. I'm sure we will come back, many of us, to you when we want to write our own book. It's also on my personal bucket list, so for sure I'll let you know. And we will both stay for a bit, I think also to share the LinkedIn, Margaret.